After more than 6 years, it's almost impossible to believe that there are new discoveries waiting for us to uncover here at Château de Purnon. And yet, this week we made one of our most extraordinary and historically significant discoveries. When we first arrived, we fell in love with the exquisite 18th century wallpaper in this tiny dressing room. Research at the Museum of Wallpapers in Rixem told us that this was the last surviving example of this incredible design situated in its original place anywhere in the world. The only other example was a panel in the museum's collection. Or so we thought.
Well, we are on the western wing of the ground floor of the chateau, and restoration work on this wing is about to commence, and there is something that we've been waiting to do for a long time. We have been dying to know if there's any traces of the original wallpaper underneath the current fabric wall covering. Let's have a look.
As we go up, we need to just ease them out.
Our heritage architect has authorised us to remove a 20th century wall covering that is not of historical significance to see if we can uncover any remaining traces of how this room was originally decorated.
Oh my goodness. And it's going to be incomplete. Oh my goodness. Oh, you know, it's the same.
As what?
It's the one in there. It's the, No, it's not. No, it's been changed. It was that though. It's got some other...
But like, oh my God, they've put a stripe on top of it.
Oh, what a tragedy. But then, no, is it that? I think it is the,
Wait, let me go check.
That's the arabesque?
Yeah.
Is it?
As the fabric covering is removed, an extraordinary discovery is revealed. The walls in this room were originally covered with the same wallpaper from the dressing room, but on a monumental scale.
This changes everything.
We need to do more panels.
The breathtaking original wallpaper was covered by a striped wallpaper in the 19th century, glued directly onto the 18th century wallpaper. But despite our initial fears, the 18th century panels are intact.
Well, this is proving a far more exciting project than we realised.
Like way beyond our expectations. So I think originally it was we were just going to do a test to see what was under one of the panels. And now that we've taken down 3, I think we should keep going.
For sure. So the 3 panels that we've done, we've discovered not just traces, but the whole panels of the original 18th century wallpaper. And we've discovered that it's the same wallpaper that still is in the dressing room just next to us. So what do you think we're going to find on this side of the room?
So I have a theory. I think that the reason that these 3 panels, or 2 full-length panels actually, are still intact is because that the layout of this room was changed. This wall was actually moved, so it was actually further back, and we know this because the fireplace is not in the centre of the room. And I think that when they moved this wall, they wanted to have a wallpaper over all the walls, so they had the same wallpaper.
Consistent wallpaper.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And I think They just didn't touch the wallpaper that was still remaining, and they just covered over it.
So they didn't cover it because they didn't like it. They covered it because it wasn't the same for the new room that they'd created.
This is what my theory is.
Okay, right.
And I think that that's why, because normally when we find wallpaper that's covered, there's very small traces of it, or when you do take the more recent layers of wallpaper off, you see that the wallpaper underneath is really damaged.
Yeah.
That is certainly not the case here.
Yeah. So as we take these frames and then the fabric off here, we're going to find, you think we're going to find the striped wallpaper, but not the original 18th century
That's what
wallpaper.
I would assume. But what I would really love to do also is there is quite a strange piece of fabric sitting in a frame above the mirror, and that's not really what we see here. Like normally if there's something above the mirror, it's a painting or it's something more decorative than a piece of wallpaper.
So why don't we start over here then and see what's behind that frame. I think we should get the scaffolding down and put the scaffolding up, because I think the ladders are proving it was okay for just doing a test, but for doing now what we want to do, I think we're much easier with the scaffolding.
Yeah, let's put everything else on hold for a couple of days and just have some fun in here and see what we can uncover.
Okay, let's go for it.
Babe.
Oh gosh, that looks so new, that wood.
Yeah, that does look really new.
Nothing there.
It's empty.
Yep. But the lack of burlap suggests to me
that there was a painting.
Well, yeah, that there was something that wasn't on burlap.
Yeah.
But this crossbar is interesting. You know, like they added.
Do you know why? I know why. Because without the crossbar, they couldn't add the frame. And so if there was a painting there that sat in a different frame, or that sat right into, see how there's that sat right into there?
Yeah.
Like actually it would have been on a piece of wood or stretched on a canvas on a frame that sat directly in.
Came all the way to here.
And came to there, and then they've added those because otherwise they wouldn't have had space to put the frame in.
All right, well that's
we need to find the missing painting.
Well, we do have one, hun, that sat in one of these panels.
Is it on a frame?
It's not in a frame. It's but it's of the same style as the one in Auguste's room and in Alexandre's room.
Whereabouts is it?
It's in the Chateau archives. But it's that kind of, you know, primitive cherub type scene.
We should see if it's that size.
Yeah. So this is the decorative panel from the Chateau archives.
Oh, I don't think it's the one from here.
Yeah, it's square.
Square.
I think it's about 80 by 80. And these are rectangular panels.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. I wonder where this came from. It's definitely been taken down, like it's hung somewhere, because you can see it's got the nail marks
another
in
one
it.
of our mysteries, and we'll solve it.
Back to the archives.
Yeah.
Okay. It was worth a try.
At Purnon, the wallpapers are typically attached to a burlap or hessian backing. This 18th century technique created a void between the paper and the walls. It protected the wallpapers from moisture, condensation, and it even improved insulation. The burlap backing is one of the key reasons why Purnon's wallpapers have survived for almost 250 years.
Well,
Whoa!
there it is.
Look at that. Oh my gosh, this is...
It's going to come off very easily there in here too, look.
This panel's quite damaged actually. This is not what we expected at all. So here's my revised theory. I think that this wall was the original wall that was moved. So even though it was further back, then when they created a billiard room, which we know they created because on a lot of the panels it says like above the door to the billiard
room, yeah.
So they've just moved the wood panels back as they were.
So it's a really interesting story about the evolution of the house, because not only does it confirm, the inscriptions on the frames confirm that was a billiard room.
Yeah, changed to a billiard room.
Not the first billiard room. We know it was a trick track room.
Yeah.
For the game like backgammon.
Yeah.
Then it became a billiard room.
Yeah. And they needed it to be bigger to be the billiard room, so they created a bigger room.
And so this room became smaller, but we now know exactly how it was decorated.
So now the big question is this one. This panel originally would have been bigger. This panel will have been modified to be smaller.
So the challenge here is that unfortunately this is the one facing the window. So we need to do everything we can to protect it from direct sunlight.
Yeah. Oh gosh, Purnon, she just keeps delivering, babe.
Yeah.
She keeps the surprises coming.
So just when you think there's nothing new to discover.
Yeah.
After 6 years.
The suspense is killing me. I have to have a look. What's your bet?
I think it'll have it. I think it'll have it the whole way.
Yes! It's got it. Wait, let me see, it's the whole way. Oh, not sure. Seems pretty bad. There's a lot missing here, but it's there.
Yeah, it's in pretty bad condition, isn't it?
In fact, there's been a leak on the wall. See, look, there's water damage there.
That's interesting. So that's perhaps connected with that up there, with the...
So I thought that we were going to get no more panels, and we got 3.
Yeah, and this one here is epic.
That is epic.
It's got the, you really get a good sense of the repeat.
It just completely changes the room. Like right now, even with just sort of the elegance and the lightness of this paper versus the dark heaviness of the fabric.
Yeah, this room has been subjected to, since it was created, it would have looked beautiful.
Yeah.
And then it was subjected to 2 bouts of the world's worst interior designers. One who decided the stripy wallpaper with the frieze was the way to go, and then the second one who decided that
how to think of browns. It's going to be so beautiful.
It's going to be really good.
Well, what an exceptional discovery and such an exciting week for us, really, because our journey here to save Château de Purnon is also about doing a historically accurate restoration. And so when we come across discoveries like this that take us back to when the chateau was first constructed and that have been sitting on these walls and sitting here ever since her very first days, it is so exciting because it means that now the restoration of this room takes a very different direction to what it was previously going to. We would have chosen a wallpaper for this room, whereas now we get to work with the existing wallpaper that was hung here 250 years ago, and that is just incredible.
Yeah, it's really quite amazing. And a wallpaper like this wouldn't have arrived on a roll like a modern wallpaper. What can you tell us about how it would have been manufactured at the end of the 18th century?
So firstly, you mentioned the paper. So the paper was handmade with either linen or cotton fragments.
Okay.
And it was made in small pieces, and then the small pieces were joined together to make a long strip before the paper could be printed. So exactly as you said, paper in the 18th century wasn't made on rolls, it was in small squares. And so you see that a lot. You see lots of joins in the paper, and you can see that it's very small pieces. And this is one of the first ways to identify if a paper is an original 18th century paper, is because it has these small sections of paper. And then there is the process of printing the wallpaper, which is unbelievably complex and is what gives us this incredibly beautiful result. And it was hand block printed, and France in the 18th century became world leaders in this, and this is why we have all these exceptional wallpapers here at Purnon, because it was really at the height of what was happening in terms of 18th century interior decor. And so every single colour on the design was done with a separate block. And what a block was, it was a piece of wood that had the individual elements carved into the wood, and then the paint was applied to that piece of wood and it was printed onto the paper. And so you would print one colour first for the entire run of paper, and you would let it dry, and then you would print the next colour, then you would print the next section, all done by hand, and the block would go on. You'd give it a solid press or a bit of a tap with a mallet, and you'd keep going. And this paper has probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like it could have potentially 20 different colours. And so you think about the amount of work that would go in to do all those different colours. It's got to go through, say, 20 times. And then also the interesting thing is where you get really fine details, like this one doesn't have it. Quite often in the 18th century wallpapers you have fine dots or fine little pieces of leaves. So these were probably done with nails that were put into the block, or with a piece of metal that was embedded into the block to enable you to get those really, really fine lines.
Yeah, it's really quite exceptional.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing actually about the 18th century wallpapers and this method of printing is that because it is all done by hand, no area of the wallpaper is exactly the same. So you get this really beautiful differences in each of the motifs. Even though the design is the same, the printing is not always exactly the same because it was all done by hand.
Okay.
So that's how these incredible papers were crafted. But there's a lot happening in this paper, and so I feel like it's telling us a story.
Yeah, it's really talking to us from the late 18th century. It's giving us some sense of the politics of the 1780s.
Yeah.
So France was starting to feel really good about itself. They'd been on the winning side in the American War of Independence, and they were finally coming to a peaceful resolution to a lot of their quarrels with their arch rivals, Great Britain. And this is represented here in this paper. So in 1783, the Peace of Paris or the Peace of Versailles was signed, and these were the peace agreements. They were a series of agreements that ended the US War of Independence, but also the Anglo-Dutch wars and a number of other conflicts that had been occurring in Europe. And France was thrilled about this because it was putting to bed the demons from their defeat in the 7 Years' War a few decades before. And we can see here, firstly, the allegory of peace. He's lowered his torch, which was often symbolically the sign of putting out the flame of war. We can see here the spears and the shields that he's standing on. And so that's all of the allegories and all of the symbolism that we associate with peace. He's clutching the olive branch. And over here, with this shield, we can see the Roman god Mercury. We know it's Mercury because he's got his winged hat and his winged sandals here.
Wow, okay, I hadn't
and
noticed that.
the Roman god Mercury was the god of commerce. And in 1786, the Eden Agreement was signed between Great Britain and France. This was a free trade agreement. It turned out to be massively advantageous to Great Britain at the time, even though the French didn't realise this. And some of those effects of that free trade agreement really were part of the many causes of the approaching French Revolution. And we can see here this winged angel with the cornucopia, which is often the sign of abundance and love in a way. And so really this wallpaper is telling us the story of the geopolitical environment in France at the time. They thought that many years of war were finally behind them. They'd been on the winning side of some of those conflicts. They could see growing economic advantages coming from their free trade arrangements with Great Britain. We've got that sense of optimism captured in this paper, and it's really quite amazing, even though a lot of the prophecies wouldn't turn out to be true at all.
So the next steps with this room are really going to be all about the restoration of this incredible paper. And so I think the colour has changed quite significantly, especially on this wall. It's been quite faded. You can see down here there are traces of the green, which we see nowhere here.
Yeah.
We see only blues. And so the green has faded to blue. There's lots of sections where pieces are missing. And on most of the walls there are still sections of the wallpaper that was stuck on top of it that didn't easily come off. So what we were doing is we were carefully removing what was there, but it was falling off. And then there's sections where it has attached too strongly to the original paint, and a wallpaper restorer will now come and have a look with our architect to assess how we can save this. But we've already spoken to him and agreed that this is definitely going to be saved and definitely stay in this room. And so very, very exciting times ahead with this room.
Yeah, we've done as much as we can, and now it falls to the professionals to take the conservation, the preservation and the restoration to the next steps.
Yeah, and there's one missing panel as well. So it will be interesting to see what is going to happen with the one panel where the wallpaper wasn't present, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's quite a mystery, and it may tell us something about how this room evolved structurally.
Yeah. Well, what an exciting week here with the discovery of this beautiful wallpaper. And of course, as the restoration of this paper and this room progresses, we will keep you updated every step of the way. Otherwise, as always, if you would like to follow the restoration of Château de Purnon more closely, we post an exclusive weekly video for our Patreon and YouTube plus Patreon tier access members. Otherwise, we post frequent updates on all our social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or just hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and we will keep you updated here.
See you next week.
Thank you.